Now, Straight Talk. Dave Dickson on C-FAX 1070.
Our next guest is the president of the Directors Guild of Canada. He's going to be at UVic tonight and tomorrow showing Beowulf and Grendel, his movie from just a couple years ago. And he's also, tomorrow, there's going to be, I guess, a forum on it. The Directors Take. It's sponsored by Beck Trust. It's a lecture tomorrow at 11:30 at the University of Victoria. My pleasure to have in studio, just flew in from Toronto, Sturla Gunnarsson. Sturla, how are you?
I'm good. How are you, Dave?
Great. Thanks for coming down to C-FAX today.
It's my pleasure.
Talk a little bit about this. I guess you're turning back the clock just a little bit to I guess, look at your movie Beowulf and Grendel.
Yeah, well, the Beck Trust has this annual lecture, and they called and contacted me, asked if I would come and do this, because there are some pretty committed medievalists in Victoria, you know.
Is there?
There certainly are. This is a hotbed of it. And so it's been a great opportunity for me. I reviewed the film and went back over some of my notes and my thoughts, what I was thinking when I started, how I felt about it afterwards, and they want me to talk about that. And I guess I'll be talking, about the process of adapting this great epic. Although I don't actually call it an adaptation so much as a riff on.
As a riff on. What are your thoughts looking back on this movie then?
Well, actually, I was looking at it yesterday, and I thought it was pretty good.
Yeah.
I was pleasantly surprised.
It had a great cast in it as well.
A wonderful cast: Jerry Butler, Stellan Skarsgård, Eddie Marsan, Sarah Polley. Fantastic cast. We shot it in Iceland.
What was that like? Because that's where you were born.
Well, it was wonderful. It was the opportunity to go back to my sort of homeland and work on a landscape that's always had a very, very powerful effect on me. Of course, it was challenging. We ended up shooting in the stormiest autumn in 60 years. We had 160K winds. We lost, I think, 4 base camps that just blew away.
Just completely out of your hands.
Yes, we were dancing with the gods.
Well, look at that. I mean, you've filmed all over the place, predominantly here in Canada. What are some of the challenges filming here as opposed to over in a country like Iceland?
Well, it's interesting. The making of Beowulf has been the subject of a documentary as well, because it was very dramatic. It was a bit like Lost in La Mancha, but the film got made.
the Terry Gilliam production.
Yes. But actually, looking back on it, it seems to me, I think that that every film is very similar. That the Beowulf experience was maybe in higher relief, but every film is sort of the act of willing it into being, and full of challenge and harrowing at times.
Yeah.
And when it's all over, you just remember the good bits.
Yes, that's what you have to do. But I couldn't imagine being a director. You're basically, as opposed to, not to knock actors because they work hard, but they're basically there for a little pre-production and then the production. But you're there from pre-production and all the way through to the post. I mean, and you have the producers probably on you, stay within budget, stay within the time. Couldn't imagine having to do that.
Well, yeah, but it sure beats working.
Yeah, I guess so. I'd say that about my job too. But looking at that, the movie definitely has a bit of a cult following. You said, especially here in Victoria with our medieval fan base, I guess. Well,
it's very interesting. The film has just chugged along like crazy since it was released. It was a successful film in its release. By that, a successful Canadian release, which is almost an oxymoron. But, it was the second highest grossing film the year it was released in Canada. But it's just chugged along. It's gotten this kind of big cult following. It's people keep ripping it and mash up and, making there's all kinds of Beowulf and Grendel mashups on YouTube. And I think...
Do you appreciate that? That must make you feel good. There's people,
I love it. I think it's great.
Yeah.
I think it's great. It means people are engaged.
Yeah, absolutely. I always wonder about what it's like being a director, because it's obviously your pet project when you produce something or you film something. How do you handle critics? Do you pay attention to them, or is it something you just worry about? You want to put out the best that in your mind, what you're passionate about.
I think when making a film, it takes on a life of its own. And it there's a little, you rub the sticks together and a little bit of a fire begins, and then you just try to, keep blowing on that flame and make it bigger and make the film. So I don't really think too much about critics until after the fact.
Yes.
Once the film is made, and if they like it, then I am of the view that critics are an essential part of establishing the relationship between filmmaker and audience. And if they don't like it, I think they are a bunch of writer manqués.
Nice. Sterling Gunnarsson is our guest. He's the president of the Directors Guild of Canada, and he's going to be at UVic tonight at the Cinecenta as they'll be broadcasting. I don't want to say premiering because the movie came out a few years ago, Beowulf and Grendel. What can people expect tonight? Are you going to be answering questions, or that is more in the lecture tomorrow?
No, tonight I'll introduce the film. We'll screen it, and it's my own private print. I think this is only the second or third time it's seen the light of day. So it's a beautiful, crisp 35 millimeter print. And then we will have a discussion afterwards. I'll take questions. I'm told that we can go as late as we want.
Nice.
And then tomorrow there'll be a lecture. I think it's an hour or so, and at that time I'll be showing clips from the making of, because there was a documentary made while we were making Beowulf, and it was an Icelandic independent filmmaker, and he had his own artistic freedom, so it's kind of a documentary about me turning into a troll.
Well, I think that's really taken off, hasn't it? The whole behind the scenes documentary of actually filming a movie, and it's almost commonplace now in every movie. Do you like that aspect of someone filming your own movie?
Well, this documentary it's not a promotional film. It's a legitimate documentary, and he had his I've had many great opportunities making films where I've asked people for access to their lives, and I've asked them to let me make films about them. So when he came knocking, I couldn't very well say no. So I find it a little bit painful to watch this film because it catches me in the middle of many crises, but I've sort of got to the point now where I don't actually mind showing it and laughing about it.
Now, talk a little bit about, because as we mentioned, you've done documentaries, movies, and of course, television as well. What's that transition like, filming TV episodes as opposed to a movie? I guess it's obviously a lot quicker, but are you on a tighter deadline? What's that process like?
Well, it's very liberating in a way. A film is a director's medium. It's the director is the author of the film.
Yes.
In television, it tends to be the producer's medium, and you.
Why is that?
Well, because there's especially with series drama, there's a whole machine set up. Usually, the producer is one of the head writers. And the directors, our guests say, they will have maybe on a show they'll have 2, 3, maybe 4 directors that alternate. And so, as a director on a television series, like just recently Defying Gravity for ABC, and what you do is you arrive, you read the script, you have a short prep time, you direct, you do an edit, and you walk away. And you're really there to kind of realize something within a broader vision.
Yes,
and it's very liberating.
I bet, and it's nice for me to walk out.
You don't have the same kind of responsibilities.
Yes, you're not there through the whole process.
No,
yeah.
They want you for your floor skills, for your experience and skills, and they expect you to bring your artistic sensibility to it, but they're not looking for you to reinvent it.
Mm-hmm.
It's
just to be another piece in their puzzle.
Yeah, they want somebody who's going to come in, because the cast is a constant.
Yes.
They're there every week. The writers are there every week. The production team is there every week. The director is the guy who comes in, or girl, and brings in the new energy.
Yeah.
And sort of keeps it fresh.
Absolutely. Well, who are some of your favorites that you've got to work with? I'm sure you've worked with some fantastic talent on the screen. Who are some notables in your mind?
Well, Stellan Skarsgård.
Yes.
I love Stellan. He's
is he from Sweden originally?
Yes.
Yes. He's terrific.
He's just such a generous person and such a great actor. I mean, we were in very, very extreme circumstances in Iceland, and he just so I like it. He says, acting in this landscape, it's impossible to be too big.
Yeah. Did you catch him going off here? But I've always liked him. I think probably the first time I recognized him was, of course, he was in Good Will Hunting. But he played a director on Entourage. Did you catch any of that?
No, I haven't seen that.
It's unbelievable because it's a bit of a take on Werner Herzog, who's a famous director, of course, who I'm sure everybody knows. And he plays him who's overbearing, almost like a tyrant on the set. And he was absolutely fantastic.
I'll bet he's channeling Lars von Trier too, because he's done quite a few films with Lars, and Lars is mad.
Is he mad? I guess. Do you almost have to be sometimes when you're doing a movie?
Well, a friend of mine saw the documentary about Beowulf, and she said she's a child psychologist, and she said, Sterla, you were displaying the classic symptoms of an abused child, of denial. And I said, well, it's without denial, it's impossible to make a film. We live in constant denial. If you actually sort of allowed all of the things that could go wrong out of your consciousness, that you just wouldn't do it. So
yeah. You just have to block it out.
Just block it out. And most directors are a little bit obsessive.
Yes, I guess you'd have to be. It goes with the territory. Now, let's look at your role as the president of the Directors Guild of Canada. What type of work do you do at the Guild? You're representing directors, and what else?
Well, the Directors Guild is it's a national organization. We have 4,000 members. We represent both all the creatives on a production, for directors, assistant directors, production designers, editors. So it's not exclusively a Directors Guild. It began as a Directors Guild, and we have a big staff. It's a big organization. I'm the head. I don't actually run the Directors Guild. They just trot me out when they need a walking, talking director to talk. And I manage a big national board. I chair a big board. We're involved in lobbying, cultural policy. Of course, we're involved in the organization is involved in collective bargaining and all the whole economic side of the industry.
Is that a big challenge right now for the industry? Is the economics and where are we headed here, the film industry in Canada?
Yeah, I think where are we headed? Whatever here in Canada, we're in the middle of a really sort of cataclysmic change, and I think I'd like to think that we're pretty progressive, forward thinking. I think that there's lots of challenges with the sort of digital revolution that we're confronting, but there's also tremendous opportunity. The industry globally is becoming much, more and more of a sort of a monoculture. I mean, it's on any given day there seems to be about 6 movies playing everywhere on the planet Earth.
Yes, or every week there's about 6 being released, at least major ones.
But it's sort of like it's the same 6 movies whether you're in Bombay or New York or Toronto. So I think the challenge that we have as Canadians is the same as the challenge that independent filmmakers have everywhere in the world, and that is, how to find our place in an increasingly corporatized environment. But
how do we stake our place in there and stake our claim here in Canada and become more prominent?
Well, we live in a river called denial. I think filmmakers will things into being, and filmmakers will always make films, no matter how challenging or difficult it is. And I'm astonished. I mean, I was just recently at the Toronto Critics Awards dinner, and the films that they singled out this year are quite wonderful. I mean, there are wonderful films being made in Canada, despite the fact that we're chronically under-financed. I think it's just, it goes with the turf of independent filmmaking. And people will always dream, they will always will their films into being. And we continue to do it. We just need to get more money into the system. And that's a big part of what the Directors Guild is about also, is a think tank and a lobbying organization to try and find ways to get more money into the system.
How do you do that?
Well, I think that if the Canadian film industry enjoyed half of the tax incentives that the oil patch enjoyed, we would be booming, and it would be a green, knowledge-based, revenue-generating industry. So I think we do things like argue the case for tax reform. Filmmaking is a high-risk enterprise, just like resource industries. You have to dig a lot of wells to get a gusher.
It can employ a lot of people here in Canada, too.
It employs a lot of people. And like I said, it's their knowledge-based jobs. They're creative jobs. They're the kind of jobs that create neighborhoods you want to be in. They're green jobs. It's, investing in film is a no-brainer. And, we keep singing that song to anybody who'll hear it.
Yeah.
Including the federal government.
Including the federal government. Who's a director or two in your mind, an up-and-coming Canadian that we should keep an eye out for?
Well, there's a young man named Javier Delon, who he's only 20 years old. He's made this film, J'ai tué ma mère, I killed my mother, and it's astonishingly assured. It's sophisticated. It's funny. It's Canada's official entry in the in the Oscars as foreign language film. He's 20 years old. He wrote, directed, and stars in it. Very, very auspicious start. I urge anybody that has the opportunity to see it to go. Benoit Pilon, who made The Necessities of Life. He's a documentarian who's just made his first feature. Features Natar Ungalak, the guy who starred in Fast Runner.
Yes.
It's a story of a man from Baffin Island who sort of finds himself in a tuberculosis sanatorium in Montreal. Beautiful film, really beautiful, stunning.
Great stuff. So there's some fantastic talent out there. It's just a matter of
and this
of getting
weekend
it out
a film by Gary Yates called High Life. Very entertaining. Opening this weekend.
Great stuff. I don't know if it's here in Victoria. We'll have to wait and see. We were usually a little bit behind here on the West Coast. Sturla Gunnarsson, thanks so much for coming down. It was great to talk to you. And Beowulf and Grendel will be showing tonight at the Cinecenter at 7:30. And Sturla will be there to answer questions if you have any. Great stuff. Thanks so much, and enjoy your trip out west.
Thank you very much. Nice being here.
Absolutely. Sturla Gunnarsson, the president of the Directors Guild of Canada. That's it for the program today. Thanks to Corey Polkinghorn for producing. 3 o'clock news report is next, followed by Adam Sterling. Have a great afternoon from me, Dave Dickson, here on C-FAX 1070.